The illusion of love, it doesn't always begin with fireworks. Sometimes it starts quietly, like a hand that brushes yours just a second longer than usual, a glance held a heartbeat too long, or a message sent at midnight that feels oddly comforting. He sees you, that's how it feels in the beginning. After all the noise, all the uncertainty, all the waiting, you think you found it. When you think this is what love is supposed to feel like, he doesn't walk in with red flags waving. No, he walks in like poetry. He remembers your coffee order, listens to your favorite song. When you pull, laughs at your stories like they're the best thing he's heard all week. He's attentive, charming, magnetic, and suddenly you're smiling at your phone like a teenager again. You start to believe in timing, in fate, in second chances. You think maybe this time it's real. But that's the thing about illusion, it doesn't demand your suspicion. It seduces you into comfort. You begin to share your world with him. You talk about your childhood, your dreams, your fears. You let him into places that still age, and he listens. He looks at you like your art. Delicate, mysterious, worthy of admiration. He makes you feel chosen, special, loved. But what you don't realize is that he's not choosing you. He's choosing what you give, your light, your strength, your empathy. He's not in love with you. He's in love with how you make him feel about himself. He doesn't build with you, he consumes. You become his emotional home, his therapist, his cheering squad. You lift him when he's low, affirm him when he's unsure, and stand by him when the world turns cold. And at first you do it willingly, because love, real love, is selfless, right? But you start to notice something. His effort is selective. His attention has conditions. The warmth you give doesn't come back with the same intensity. He listens, but only when it suits him. He supports you, but only when he's not the one who needs something first. And when you need him, truly need him, he disappears into vague excuses and unanswered messages. But you don't walk away. When you pull away, not yet. Because you've already invested. You've already told yourself stories about this connection. You've replayed your first conversation in your mind 100 times. You've posted pictures with captions like, "Finally." And your friends have started saying things like, "It seems good for you." You don't want to be wrong. You don't want to be dramatic. You don't want to believe that this was never love. It was just need wrapped in charm. So you justify, you rationalize, you tell yourself he's just busy. He's healing. He's figuring things out. You give more. You try harder. You become more understanding, more patient, more silent. You suppress the parts of you that ask for too much because you don't want to push him away. You ignore the gut feeling screaming inside you because maybe, just maybe, if you love him enough, he'll love you back the way you deserve. And that's the cruelty of it all. He doesn't have to take from you by force. You hand it over, piece by piece, believing it's love. You give him your best, thinking one day he'll wake up and realize what he has. But he won't, because he didn't come looking for someone to build with. He came looking for someone to lean on. And when the weight becomes too much, he doesn't try to carry it with you. He walks away and leaves you buried beneath it. Still, you keep reaching for that illusion. The version of him that showed up in the beginning. The version that laughed with you, listened to you, made you feel seen. But that version was never real. It was bait. It was performance. It was exactly what he needed to be to get what he wanted. And when you started wanting something deeper, something mutual, something real, he started to retreat. But the illusion doesn't die easily. It lingers in the memories, in the texts you scroll through at 2 a.m., in the voice notes you still haven't deleted. It makes you second guess yourself, makes you feel like maybe you were the problem. Maybe you were too emotional, too intense, too much. But that's the trick. That's how illusion works. It makes you believe in something that was never there. It convinces you to doubt yourself instead of questioning him. The illusion of love isn't about flowers and fancy dinners. It's about emotional manipulation wrapped in just enough affection to keep you hooked. It's about someone who takes from you without ever having to ask. Because you're too in love with who you thought he was to realize who he really is. Red flags dressed as romance. He doesn't raise his voice. Not at first. He doesn't storm out, throw things, or belittle you in public. Instead, he says things that sound like concern, like care, like love. He says, "You're too trusting. That girl you call a friend doesn't really like you." He says, "You're too emotional sometimes. You take things too personally." He says, "I only want what's best for you." And because you want to believe that someone is finally looking out for you, you listen. That's how it begins. Little words wrapped in affection. The comments are subtle, soft-edged, just enough to make you question yourself, not him. He doesn't tell you what to wear, but he raises an eyebrow when you dress a certain way. He doesn't forbid you from seeing someone, but he sighs deeply when you say you're meeting that friend again. You start editing your life before he even asks you to, just to keep the peace, to keep him pleased. That's how manipulation wears its mask, polished, warm, and hard to detect. Because it doesn't look like control, it looks like attention, like intimacy. He remembers what you wore on your first date, how you take your tea, what makes you cry in films. And you mistake detail for devotion. You confuse obsession for love. He disappears for days and comes back with a smile. He doesn't explain, just says, "I've been busy. You know how I am." And you do know, you've memorized the excuses. You've rehearsed forgiveness. He knows you'll be there waiting. So he stops trying. And when you ask questions, you're suddenly the problem. You're so paranoid. Why can't you just trust me? You always ruin a good thing. You start to shrink. You stop speaking when things bother you because the last time you did, he ghosted you for a week. You stop expecting effort because whenever you ask for more, he accuses you of nagging. You stop showing your real self because he only seems to love the version of you that bends, not the one that breaks. And the worst part is, you start to believe him. You start to think that maybe you are too much. Maybe he's right. Maybe you should be grateful he's still around. So you overcompensate. You text first. You apologize first. You forgive things that chip away at your self-worth just to keep the illusion of love alive. He doesn't need to say you're lucky to have him. You feel it every time he withholds affection, every time he turns cold without warning, and you blame yourself for the sudden winter. When you pull away, guiding doesn't come with flashing lights. It comes with soft lies casually told. It comes in sentences like, "You're remembering it wrong," or "I never said that," or "You're imagining things." It makes you doubt your mind, your heart, your voice, until you start saying sorry for things you didn't do just to calm the storm. Until you don't trust your own instincts anymore, but you tell yourself it's just a phase, that he's complicated, that love is hard. You hold on to the good moments, because there are some. The way he holds your hand in public, the time he made you soup when you were sick, the playlist he sent you out of nowhere. You collect those memories like currency, using them to pay for all the moments that left you in pieces. You tell your friends you're happy, but your voice cracks. You post pictures with smiles that don't reach your eyes. You write captions, "my person," when deep down, you don't even know if he'd show up and it really matters. And when someone asks you how it's going, you hesitate for a second too long. The truth is, he keeps you just close enough not to lose you, but never close enough to truly keep you. You're always reaching, always hoping, always proving. He creates a hunger for love and then starves you. He offers breadcrumbs and you call it a meal. It's not easy to spot red flags when they're handed to you in a bouquet. When they come with candlelit dinners and compliments that sound like confessions. When the same hands that hold you also keep you caged. When the same lips that kiss you also deliver carefully wrapped criticisms. You mistake possessiveness for protection, jealousy for passion, silence for mystery. He's not cruel in obvious ways. He doesn't scream. He just disappears when you need him and reappears when you start to move on. He teaches you to crave his attention like oxygen. You learn to live on inconsistency. You learn to interpret his indifference as normal. And slowly you redefine what love looks like. Not based on what you deserve, but based on what he's willing to give. Losing yourself to please him, you don't wake up one morning and decide to lose yourself. It happens slowly, like water slipping through your fingers. At first, you're just adjusting, being flexible, accommodating, understanding. You compromise, you adapt, you give the benefit of the doubt again and again. You tell yourself that relationships require effort, that being in love means choosing someone even it's hard, so you choose. Every single day, you choose him. You begin by changing the little things. You stop wearing that lipstick shade he once said was a bit much. You start laughing less loudly because he said it drew too much attention. You hold back opinions when he talks about politics, your job, your dreams, because he made you feel small the last time you challenged him. You shrink in places no one sees. It's quiet, barely noticeable, even to you. He says he likes you more when you're chill. So you stop reacting when he cancels plans last minute. You stop expressing hurt when he forgets important dates. You train yourself not to care too much, not to need too much. You become the cool girl, the one who's always available but never demanding, always supportive but never emotional, always present but never truly seen. When you trade your intuition for his approval, you stop listening to that voice inside you that says, "This doesn't feel right," and you start hearing his voice louder than your own. He's the one who decides what's overreacting. He's the one who defines what's too sensitive, too dramatic, too needy. So you adjust your emotional range to fit within the narrow lines he's drawn for you. Anything outside that frame becomes a threat. a reason for him to pull away. Your dreams begin to shift, not because you've outgrown them, but because you can see the discomfort in his eyes every time you talk about them. You stop discussing that promotion, that passion project, that move to another city. When you pull away, you don't want to be too ambitious, you don't want to be difficult. You don't want him to feel like he's not enough. So you edit your future into something that fits within his comfort zone, not your calling. You start keeping secrets from your own reflection. You say things are fine when they're not. You defend him to your friends when you know they're right. You smile in public and cry in the shower. You carry the weight of his moods, his bad days, his emotional absence. And somehow you make it all your fault. You apologize for things he did. You forgive without being asked. You wait for apologies that never come because in your mind love means endurance. You pride yourself on being the one who stays, the one who holds it together, the one who doesn't give up. You call it strength. But in quiet moments when no one is watching, it doesn't feel like strength. It feels like surrender, like self-betrayal, like breaking into smaller pieces just to be enough for someone who was never built to hold all of you. Your life starts to revolve around his. His needs become the priority. His schedule becomes the structure. You wait for his texts before you make plans. You dress for his taste. You dim your light so his can shine brighter. And no, he doesn't ask you to. That's the tragic part, he never has to. Because you've already internalized the idea that love is about giving everything, even when nothing comes back. You stop recognizing yourself in the mirror, the girl who used to laugh freely, who used to take up space, who used to dream with her whole chest. That girl feels like a distant memory. Now you second guess your words before you speak. You watch his reactions before forming your opinions. You tiptoe around his silence, hoping it doesn't turn into something colder. And when he's kind again, when he throws you a bone of affection, you feel grateful, like he's doing you a favor by loving you at all. You start measuring your worth by how happy you make him. You see your value only through his gaze. If he smiles at you today, when you pull away, if he ignores your message, you start wondering what you did wrong. You become so invested in earning his love that you forget it should have never been a transaction. The scariest part isn't that he's changing you, it's that you're willingly changing for him. You are molding, muting, morphing, just to keep him close. You keep telling yourself that this is temporary, that once he's more stable, more healed, more secure, he'll appreciate everything you've done. But deep down, you know you're becoming someone you don't even like. And still you stay. Not because you don't see the truth, but because somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that this is what love is supposed to be: sacrifice, struggle, silence. The moment of realization, it doesn't come as a lightning strike. It's not cinematic. It's not some loud argument or a dramatic goodbye. The moment of realization is quiet, almost too quiet. It comes when you least expect it. Maybe in the middle of folding laundry, or while looking for your keys, or sipping your coffee in silence after another long night spent waiting for a reply that never came. It creeps in slowly, like a chill that wraps around your bones. And before you can name it, you already know, you finally see him for who he is. Not the version you fell in love with, not the man who made you feel chosen, wanted, adored, but the man who only shows up when it's convenient. The man who takes more than he gives. The man who didn't break your heart in one clean motion, but wore it down inch by inch, day by day, with every lie you believed and every truth you ignored. It's jarring because it doesn't look like what you imagined heartbreak to be. There are no screaming fights, no explosive betrayals, just an overwhelming sense of exhaustion, of being emotionally bankrupt, of waking up and realizing you're not in love, you're in survival mode. You realize you've been fighting for something that was never fighting for you. You've been twisting yourself into versions you can't recognize just to hold on to a relationship that's always slipping through your fingers. You've been calling it love when, really, it was dependency, or fear, or habit. You were never being loved, you were being used. For comfort, for validation, for convenience. And somehow, that truth feels heavier than any heartbreak you've ever known. You think back to all the times you made excuses for him. How many times you forgave without an apology. How often you sat in silence while he unraveled your piece, thread by thread. You remember the way he could disappear for days without explanation? And how you still greeted him with softness when he came back. You remember how you trained yourself to lower your expectations until there was nothing left to expect. You remember the way your body would tense every time his mood shifted. How you became an expert at reading between the lines of a one-word reply. How you started preparing for disappointment before he even had the chance to deliver it. You carried the weight of his emotions like it was your responsibility. You watered dead plants. You built homes out of empty promises. You stayed. But this moment, the moment of realization, feels like the air has been knocked out of you. Because now you see it. All of it. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the moments you brushed off thinking they weren't a big deal. The love you thought you were receiving was actually conditional, transactional, based on your usefulness, based on your silence, based on how little you asked for. And you want to scream at him, at yourself. At every moment you ignored your gut instinct and chose to believe in potential instead of reality. You want to rewind and shake the version of you who begged for affection, who thought a text back was love, who thought his inability to commit was her fault. But you can't. You can only sit with this truth and let it sink in. The hardest part isn't just realizing that he used you. It's realizing how willingly you gave him access, how much you gave. Time, energy, trust, love. Hoping it would be enough to finally make him stay, finally make him choose you, finally make him see your worth. You realize that he never really had to try. Because you did all the work. You filled the silence. You solved the problems. You carried the burden of the relationship on your back and called it devotion. And now, you are left holding the truth in your hands like a shattered mirror. Every piece reflects something different. The way you justified the red flags, the way you downplayed your own needs, the way you accepted breadcrumbs and called it a feast. And it hurts, not just because of what he did, but because of what you allowed, what you tolerated, what you confused for love. This isn't about blame. It's about clarity. It's about seeing things not as you wish they were, but as they are. It's about standing in front of the emotional wreckage and finally admitting that the man you loved was never really there. Not for you, not in the way that mattered, not in the way you deserved. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's not even said in the way you thought it would be. It's just quiet, heavy, honest. The illusion is gone. The fantasy has collapsed. And in that silence, there's a shift. Something inside you hardens, not of bitterness, but out of necessity. You realize this isn't about him anymore. It's about you. When you voice your value, your truth, reclaiming your power, it starts quietly, not with rage, not with revenge, but with a question whispered into the dark when no one else is around. Who was I before him? You sit with it. When you try to remember the girl who didn't flinch when her phone buzzed, who didn't second guess every text, every laugh, every outfit, every emotion. The girl who didn't walk on eggshells or shrink her voice to make space for someone else's ego. You start digging, brushing the dust off memories that feel like they belong to someone else. But she's still in there. Buried beneath the stories you were told, the lies you were fed, the love you thought you needed. She's quiet but not broken. Reclaiming your power isn't dramatic. It's not some grand speech or one-night epiphany. It's made up of small choices, each one a rebellion. You stop explaining yourself to people who never cared to understand you. You stop trying to convince him or anyone of your worth. You take the energy you spent begging to be seen and pour it back into yourself. And it feels strange at first, uncomfortable, even lonely. But slowly it starts to feel like peace. You begin to recognize that survival was never the same as self-love. That staying wasn't noble. It was self-abandonment dressed as loyalty. That forgiveness doesn't mean tolerating mistreatment, and compassion doesn't require setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You unravel the myths one by one, and with each unraveling, you stand a little taller. Reclaiming your power means grieving, not just the man, not just the relationship, but the version of you that believed she had to earn love by suffering. You grieve the time you lost, the parts of yourself you silenced, the love you gave so freely to someone who saw it as disposable. And it's not graceful, it's messy. Some days you cry in your car, bite your lip to keep from calling him, stare at old photos wondering how you ever thought that was happiness. But other days, you breathe easier, you smile and mean it. You realize you didn't lose him, you found yourself in his absence, you start saying no. No to excuses, no to breadcrumbs, no to anyone who makes you feel like too much. And when you say no, it's not out of spite, it's out of clarity. You know what it costs to make yourself small. You know what it feels like to be someone's backup plan, someone's emotional crutch, someone's convenience. And now, you choose yourself. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need validation. It doesn't scream, it doesn't prove. It simply exists. Quiet, when you pull rooted, unshakable. You stop looking for closure from the person who caused the wound. You stop rereading conversations, dissecting what you could have done differently. When you understand that sometimes the only closure you get is the one you create when you walk away and never look back. Reclaiming your power means rediscovering your passions. You pick up that book you stopped reading. You start writing again, dancing again. You reconnect with friends who miss the real you. You pour into your work, your goals, your joy, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you finally have space. Space that used to be filled with anxiety, overthinking, emotional chaos. Now it's yours. And you guard it fiercely. You learn to love without losing yourself. You set boundaries, not walls, but doors with locks, because not everyone deserves access. You trust your intuition again. You don't chase, you attract. And when someone walks away, you let them. Because love should never feel like begging. It should never feel like breaking. Healing doesn't come in a straight line. Some days you'll miss him. Some nights you'll feel the ache of memories you didn't ask for. But even in that pain, there's power, because now you know better. You see the signs, you see yourself, and you're no longer willing to compromise your peace just to feel wanted. You become the version of you that he never deserved, the one who doesn't settle, the one who doesn't tolerate half love or emotional absence, the one who isn't afraid to be alone because she knows solitude is not the same as loneliness. It's where your voice gets louder, when your truth becomes clearer, where you